On November 21st, 1992, Tom Monfils disappeared after a workplace dispute. A day later, his body was found in a pulp vat with a 50-pound weight wrapped around his neck. Over 30 years later, exactly who killed Monfils remains a mystery. Welcome to the Monfils 6 podcast. My name is Damon Schneider.
I'm Mike Putchell.
In this podcast, we will be discussing the mysterious case of Tom Monfils and the events that led up to him being found in a pulp vat with a 50-pound weight wrapped around his neck. This first episode is titled How Things Started. I just want to briefly talk about how we came to learn of this case. So I remember being in electronics class at Oshkosh West High School back in 1992, late November afternoon, and the radio was on in the class, and the announcer came on to the radio and said a worker at a paper factory in Green Bay had been found dead, his body placed in a pulp vat with a weight strapped around it. And I remember just thinking that I was shocked. I could not believe something like that could have happened in a place like Green Bay. It was almost like it was pure evil. Mike, how did you come across this case?
Well, I came across this case from you. You told me about it, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. I had not heard of it before. I had never heard of Tom Monfils, never heard of the James River paper mill. And I'm from New Berlin, Wisconsin, which is more in the Milwaukee area. This occurred in Green Bay, this killing. And in 1992, I was just a baby when Tom's body was found. 1995, when the convictions occurred, I would have just been a little kid. So this, of course, would not be something on my mind. I wouldn't have been paying attention to this. And so I think this is also a case that a lot of people haven't heard of. I've spoke with family and friends about it since you told me about it. They could not really recall this case. So I think this will be something new for a lot of people.
Yeah, I really think that this is the greatest true crime case in the history of Wisconsin, even more so than Making a Murderer. It's funny you bring up family members because I mentioned this to my mom a few months ago. And when I brought up the idea that the Monfils 6 might have been innocent, she immediately said, of course they're guilty. Of course. So that's the way she had followed the case closely. But I want to go back to Green Bay in 1992 and just kind of lay the foundation. Mm-hmm. So Green Bay is a city of about 100,000 people. It's mostly made up of suburbs, mostly known for the Green Bay Packers. I think actually in 1992, that was the first year that Brett Favre became the quarterback of the Packers. And they had many decades of success since then. Unfortunately, Tom Monfils would not get to enjoy all that success that the Packers had because of the events of November 21st, 1992. Mike, what are your impressions of Green Bay?
Well, it's not really a city I've been to a whole lot. Again, even though I am from Wisconsin, I born and grew up in Wisconsin, lived here pretty much my whole life. But I have been to Green Bay a few times. I've been to the zoo up there. It's a nice place. And from what I have seen of the city, like I said, I've been there about 3 times. It seems fine. It seems like a nice place to raise a family, pretty quiet community. Of course, not a lot of crime. The Packers are, kind of the whole the whole story there. Uh, for the state too, but of course, being in Green Bay, smaller town, it's a big deal. It's huge, the Packers there. But I think it's a place too where a lot of people, there's not a lot of people coming into the city and there's not a lot of people leaving. And I know that, like many smaller Wisconsin communities that are family oriented, like Green Bay, a lot of people end up coming back. Maybe they left to start a career. They end up coming back when it starts becoming time that they want to raise a family. They return to Green Bay because they know that it is a great place to raise a family because they grew up there themselves and they want to have that experience for their kids.
I agree. I think it is a place that a lot of people come back to for sure. So Tom Monfils worked at a paper factory. In particular, they produced toilet paper, which seems comical, but we can all recall just a few years ago at the height of the pandemic that toilet paper was literally flying off the shelves of grocery stores. So it's something that we all need, and it was a relatively good job for Monfils. It paid well at the time. It was a way to make a livelihood. So who was Tom Monfils? At the time, he was a 35-year-old man. He was married to Sue Monfils, and they had two children, one boy and one girl. Who was Monfils to you?
Yeah, to me, Monfils seemed like just a regular northern Wisconsin guy. He, like you said, he had two kids, wife, starting a young family. He didn't seem to be too much of a social individual. Certainly not what some people would say is like a social butterfly. He was not that. It seemed like he just had a select group of people that he got along with, but also identified with. It's been noted that he had a bizarre sense of humor, a bit of a dark sense of humor that kind of rubbed people the wrong way. So he didn't really fit in necessarily with the mainstream groups, but people did seem to get along with him.
And Monfils had a workplace bully, a person named Keith Kutzka. Who was Keith Kutzka?
Keith Kutzka was, again, another employee, like you said, a little bit older than Tom, about 6 years older. Had been there, of course, then a little bit longer at the mill. Keith was a bit of an opposite personality. He was very involved with the union activities, a very outspoken individual, unlike Tom. Tom was a little bit more reserved, it seemed. That doesn't mean he still didn't have his opinions, as we'll talk in a little bit. But Keith certainly had his opinions, and he made everybody aware of them. And Keith seemed like somebody who was not afraid to, butt heads with people to get what he wanted and to get his point across.
One of the reasons I'm interested in this case, I think, is that I have experienced a workplace bully as well. A place where I used to work, there was an individual who was sort of my boss. He had the ability to get me in trouble for sure, and I he caused me a lot of anxiety. And my last year actually there, uh, if I saw him walking down the hall, I literally would turn my back and start walking in the opposite direction. And I actually did not even say a single word to him my last year. Have you ever experienced a bully?
Not like anything you just described, thankfully. I haven't really had a lot of workplace conflict like that. And in a school setting either. I'm glad. My school was not very My school did not have problems like that, at least that I experienced personally. So fortunate in that regard.
So Monfils and Kutska were butting heads. What were they butting heads over in particular?
So there was a discussion going on. Like I had said, Keith was involved in the union, heavily involved in union activities, attended all the meetings, and was very involved in that. And there had been talk of changing the shifts. I believe it was from they wanted to go to a 4-day work week, and they had been working 5-day work week. I believe that's correct. Uh, Tom wanted the 4-day change. He wanted to have the 3 days, the 3-day weekends, and I believe Keith wanted to keep things the way they were. And Tom was a little more of, I don't know if I'd say he was a leader in this proposing or supporting the 4-day work week, but Tom supported the 4-day work week plan. And Keith was one of the outspoken supporters of keeping things the way they were. And this is kind of the start of Tom having an issue with Keith.
And now for a quick break. Memento mori. Remember, you must die someday. However, your life can be remembered forever by contacting us at seasonsoflifememorials.com. We are here to teach you how to create a film about your life that can be seen at your future gravesite, as well as within the obituary section of your very own newspaper. Contact us today at seasonsoflifememorials.com. Mike, can you elaborate on our business?
Sure. So Seasons of Life Memorials, it's certainly a unique business idea. It's definitely something worth checking out on the website just to get an idea of really what it is. It is something very new. It's unlike anything that I've seen anywhere else. It is a new way of memorializing somebody. It's not your typical obituary in the newspaper or your memorial slideshow that you see at funeral homes or at memorial services. This is really embracing the new technology of QR codes. And, you know, if you want to do a video for somebody that you love, it can be anything from something as short as a 60-second project to something more in depth where it's almost like a short documentary, you know, something in the time frame of 15 minutes. And, you know, you can collaborate with us as much as you'd like, you know, telling us, you know, what you'd like to focus on as far as the subject matter of somebody's life. Or if you're really not sure, we can certainly help you with that and kind of look into the person's life and show the highlights of their life. And with the QR code, this is something that can last for decades, you know, however long the technology supports it. It's a really a revolutionary way of remembering somebody.
And we're back. So Monfils and Kutska were disagreeing about a shift change. Then something really strange happens. Monfils learns that Kutska wants to steal something. What is it that he wants to steal?
Monfils learns that Keith Kutska wants to take some heavy-duty electrical cord that the mill is discarding, and this is something that was done frequently as far as employees being able to take materials. He had found out that Keith wanted to take it, which, again, was a common thing, not a huge deal. But there was a formal process that was supposed to be done with requesting the material. There was a form that employees were supposed to fill out, and my understanding is typically everything was always granted. I think it was just the company's way of keeping track of what's actually getting taken. But Keith decided not to do it that way, the correct way, and he ended up taking it into his own hands, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Indeed. Monfiles, he sees this as an opportunity, and he decides to make a fateful phone call to 911. Let's take a listen to this call right now.
Can we please, Michelle?
This is Mary, please.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'd like to report an employee theft, which is going to occur at
I'm sorry, which is going to occur?
Right. An employee that's taking stuff out of the paper mill.
Okay, and what is your position there?
Just an employee. I witnessed him, loading the stuff up or whatever, getting ready to take it out.
Did you notify your security?
No, I didn't. What I want you to do is you to contact them. I don't want anything to do, So basically it will be anonymous, and you will contact them to let them know what's going to happen.
Okay. Who is it?
Keith Kutska, and it's like yellow extension cord material. So it's quite expensive.
Okay.
But and he's known to be violent.
What really stands out to me in terms of this phone call is sort of the nervousness in Monfiles' voice. Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, definitely. I agree completely with that. He was extremely nervous. And why do you think that is?
Well, he realizes that should his identity be revealed as the person who called, his job and his livelihood could come to an end at the mill, because how is he going to face his fellow coworkers when they know that he ratted Keith out over a piece of cord and got Keith's livelihood destroyed? That's the way I see it. How do you see it?
I agree with that. I'll add, too, that there's another personal angle just from the fact that we know that Tom doesn't think too highly of Keith. He mentions that either in the initial call or the subsequent calls where, he refers to him as being almost like a biker kind of guy. And it's clear that Tom is afraid of Keith. So I'll add that too, that of course he's afraid of getting his identity out there for all of the ramifications, as far as job security. But he's also just plain afraid of Keith, that I think he thinks that he may hurt him.
And the Green Bay police, they kind of picked up on that as well, that how did Keith become the person of interest? Well, he's the one that Monfiles is calling about, and Monfiles seems, he says in the call that that Keith is a violent person.
Mm-hmm.
So now that he's called 911 and alerted the police that Keith is going to engage in theft, something interesting happens, in that the police tip off the security at the mill, and then on the day that Kutska is going to steal, they ask him to stop and show his bag. And instead of stopping, he, in a very sort of quick thinking maneuver, he just sort of jumps past them and says, "I don't have time for this." Is that how you would have handled the situation, Mike?
I really don't know, because I don't even think I'd be in the situation to begin with. I think I probably would have just followed the this form protocol where you just fill out the form, because it sounds like people get granted the materials anyway. I don't know how long it takes for them to grant it, but I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know how fast Keith needed this cord. I don't really know what he needed it for. It was quite a bit of material, 13 to 16 feet of this cord. But I think I probably would have just followed the correct way, and then I wouldn't have to worry about anything. What about you?
I would have filled out the form, yeah. I think so for sure. I wouldn't have risked my job over a piece of cord. That doesn't seem like like something a rational person would do. But I guess, everyone was taking. I should state, the summer after my senior year of high school, I actually was a security guard at a paper mill in Neenah, Wisconsin, called Wisconsin Tissue. And one night, overnight, the night shift, probably 3, 4 in the morning, I was doing a round, and I actually saw a man removing boxes from the factory into his car. And I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. And I actually helped the guy remove the boxes and put them into his car. And looking back at that later on in the evening, I kind of thought to myself, well, he kind of seemed a little nervous to me. So I think I actually helped this guy steal from the paper mill. But Kutzka, he did get through. However, what happened to him afterwards?
So Keith, like we said, he walked out with the material, and it ended up where did they find that he had it, or did they just suspend him?
They never found it. No, they never caught him with the cord.
So he did end up getting suspended for, was it like 5 days?
It was several days.
And if I remember now, he was suspended because he just blew past security, and he did not follow their orders. And of course, this was something very upsetting for Keith. And, this may have been well, we've talked before, and we should probably say our thoughts again here about why Tom called 911. You believe that he wanted to get Keith fired, right?
That's the only thing I can think of as to why he did that. Because he's taking a risk by calling. He's risking his job. So the fact that he did that, I believe that, he wanted Keith to get fired, and in doing so, then the shift change will go through, and he'll get his extra day, and maybe he can use that day to go fishing, go hunting, or be with his kids. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it's clear he wanted him to get in trouble. The problem is that he was hoping that everything would work out as far as staying anonymous. That was really the key to all of this, and that's a huge risk that he took. But it shows you, I guess, how much he wanted to get rid of Keith or get him in trouble. What's remembered lives. Losing someone precious from our lives is the most painful event that one can endure. Seasons of Life Memorials is dedicated to making sure the person you lost is never forgotten. We work with you to help you craft a film about your loved one's life that can be viewed at the gravesite. We can also help you create a film about your very own life that can be viewed in the obituary section of your hometown newspaper. Imagine that, your friends, relatives, and neighbors viewing your own unique story and how your life truly did matter. Visit our website, seasonsoflifememorials.com, and follow us on social media today to start viewing what we can do for you.
And while Keith was being reprimanded, he actually learns that someone inside of the factory placed a call.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, things get really interesting because Keith then begins to contact the Green Bay Police Department. And what does he do?
Yeah, Keith calls the Green Bay police, and, he had heard that someone from the mill made the call, so he's really wanting to know who turned him in, who ratted him out, as they say, and who caused this suspension, who caused this, losing of money, a week's pay or whatever it is. So this is a big deal to him, and it kind of becomes his obsession during this period, and really the only thing he seems to be thinking about is finding out who did this. And it seemed amazingly simple for him to figure that out, who ended up calling, because Keith calls the Green Bay Police Department. He ends up having to make a few different calls. It's not like they gave it to him right away, but he's persistent. He was extremely persistent. And he ends up paying a fee just for the tape itself, for a copy of the tape. And in the meantime, Tom gets word that Keith is doing this. And so Tom continues to make calls to the police as well, making sure that this tape won't be released and that his name will remain anonymous, because at this point Tom is, and I can completely understand this, Tom is probably having a lot of sleepless nights because he thinks that at any moment his identity could be found out with this call. And it turns out that, again, many people at the police department had told Tom that his identity will remain confidential. And also many people told Keith that they can't give out the tape. But then, just because of communication failures between people in the department, he ends up getting a copy of the tape. And, he doesn't know that it's Tom, but, you hear somebody's voice, and, he pretty much puts it together that that's Tom's voice on the tape.
He's to the point where he's hunting to try to find out who did this, and saying that he's going to obtain copies of the tape from Monday morning so he can verify through the voice track who did report him. Okay, now the company,
I don't know if he'll be, I don't know if he'll be able to have access to that stuff. I don't know, that isn't a matter of public record.
And I think we got to go back and look at those days leading up as they're both trying to chase this tape. Keith trying to get the tape and Tom trying to stop him from getting the tape, and kind of realize that he was in a situation where if he's found out, again, he loses his job, his livelihood. And so he may be coming up with a plan B at this point as to what happens if Keith does get the tape. And I think we have to understand, like you said, sleepless nights, probably not thinking rationally. This might lead him to come up with a plan that's maybe a little crazy, a little irrational.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, Keith does get the tape, and he brings it in to work, and he plays it in front of the coworkers and in front of Monfils. And again, this is what sets off the events of that day that would lead to them finding Monfils in the pulp vat. Which leads me to back to that afternoon in late November when I heard about the story over the radio. So these are the events that will be unfolding over this Monfils 6 podcast. New episodes drop every other Friday. Please join us again. Thanks for listening.
Have you recently lost a loved one and want to hold on to their memory forever? Would you like all of the world to view what their life had been about? Seasons of Life Memorials is what you are looking for. We create individual and unique documentary shorts that will allow anyone visiting the gravesite to view the documentary and your memories of the loved one. Contact us today to set up an appointment at seasonsoflifememorials.com.